So we got part 3 of Sabrina on Netflix, and we got a lot to break down in this review. I mean, we got a new circus in town, new characters, new relationships. The Spellmans are doing their best to keep their family afloat as well as their coven. Sabrina is doing good things, bad things. I mean, this is a lot to break down. And I mean, is this season the best one yet? What's next for part 4? Well, we're going to talk about that and much more. So part 3 of Sabrina kicks off with Sabrina recruiting Roz, Harvey, and Theo for an emotional mission. Prudence and Ambrose travel to New Orleans, and Miss Wardwell returns to Baxter High. What's going on, everybody? Elliot here from Movie Files, back with a brand new Netflix TV review for part 3 of Sabrina, and very excited to break it all down for you all today. But before we dive into it, for those that are new to this channel, definitely consider subscribing to Movie Files. What are we all about here? Well, we review the latest movies, TV shows, we do unboxings for new Blu-rays, we do giveaways, show our appreciation, and so much more. So definitely consider subscribing and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with my latest videos. And if and when you've seen this latest part 3 of Sabrina, I always want to say season, but part 3 of Sabrina, let me know your comments below if you liked it, if you didn't like it. Let me know which is your favorite part thus far, and what are you excited to see for a potential part 4 later this year. So let me know in the comments. Let's have some fun discussions down there. So if this is your first time watching my Netflix reviews, what I've been doing for the last like 5 or 6 series that I've been watching, for the first half of the video, I talk of the series of the show in a non-spoiler manner. I just break down, without giving away too much, what I like, what I didn't like. And then the second half of this video, I kind of dive deeper into those likes and dislikes, and obviously get into the spoiler aspect of the show. So definitely let's jump into the non-spoiler aspect, starting off with the positives. I'm 3 parts into the show, so I'm a pretty big fan of this show. I've been watching it since day 1. I'm a big fan of the cast. Something that always gravitates me for this show, or I should say this show has me somewhat in a spell of in its own sense, is, I enjoy the venture. I enjoy the journeys that the characters go through, the ups and downs. Not so much a fan of the love story aspects, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I like these characters, and I love how dark and gritty this show gets sometimes. It's TV-14, but you wouldn't know it sometimes. You would think this is rated R from some of the more gruesome and horrific elements about this show, and that's what this part has. Not as much as the first 2 seasons, and I'll give you my rankings at the end of this video, but this definitely has those elements that I really enjoyed about the first 2 parts. And starting off with our characters, you got to start off with Sabrina. There are some moments in this season where I feel like she's doing almost too much, where she doesn't have enough character development, and we'll talk about that later, but I still enjoy the stuff that we get Sabrina. She's a 16-year-old kid. She's the queen of hell. She's a teenager in high school. She has morals she has to please. She has her aunties. She has her duties to her father that we learned about in season 2 or part 2. So she has a lot on her plate, and I just enjoy just watching her make these good decisions sometimes and bad decisions. But that's the hook of the show, right? As you're watching this teenager deal with these things that no other teenager should deal with in her situation. But I enjoy Sabrina in this season. And we'll talk about the things I didn't like a little bit later, but I had a fun time with her and the other characters. I'm the biggest fans of 2 particular characters, or say sets of characters. One being Ambrose. I thought that he had a great season this time around. Had a lot to do. Him and Prudence had a bit of a relationship going. I won't dive too deep into that, but I liked their journey that they went on, and I liked his individual journey that he went on, as well as the aunties. Those 2 are the best for me. Z and Hilda. I just love them on screen. They always steal the scene to me. They always have funny moments. I love their back and forth, their kind of rivalry, or it's more one-sided with Z versus Hilda, but I just love seeing them on screen. They have so much magic and such great chemistry. I just love the aunties and everything they go through, and we get some new characters that I'll talk a little bit about in my spoiler review, but I liked most of the new characters and the new threats to the town that we'll talk about a little bit later with the Carnival and that crew, but I liked the elements that they brought there, and the Prince of Hell and all that stuff that we'll talk a little bit about later, and overall, like I said, I love when the show goes dark and it goes gritty and it has a little bit of those horror elements. Not as much in this part as in part 2. Definitely in part 1, but it's still there, and I love when the show does that, because it reminds me of a show that I used to watch when I was, a teenager, and that's Buffy. I think when this show is at its height and when it's on a great rhythm and tone, it reminds me so much of Buffy, because it has all those elements. It's a town that's just cursed. You got these demons, you got the hell, you got devils, you got vampires, werewolves, all the different things that we love, or at least that I love in the horror elements or in the genre. That show reminds me of that sometimes. So I really love when the show goes to those points. There's a lot in this season as far as the plot. The scope and scale of this show, or this part, is bigger than ever, which is always great to see that Netflix has faith in this show and they give them a pretty good budget. I love when they go to the practical effects. Again, I love when they get to the horrific moments. So there's a lot to take away from this season that I really enjoyed. Going into my negatives without giving too much away, again, there's a lot of pieces on the chessboard this time around, and there's almost so much going on that you don't get as much character development as we got in the first two parts, especially from our main character, Sabrina. Again, I love what she does in this season, and she has a lot on her plate, but you don't get that many quiet moments with her because she's moving around so much. There's some stuff that I'll talk about in my spoiler review that kind of complicates things with the Sabrina character, but there are a lot of moving pieces, and for some people that might be a little bit off-putting because you don't get as much time with some of these characters that we love. So that was definitely a con of mine. There were some characters that didn't really sit well with me as far as new characters and older characters that I'll talk about in my spoiler review. And I'm not gonna lie, there was probably that back half episodes, probably 6, 7, and 8, and some of 5 I was not that big a fan of. It was like very almost cringeworthy, and I know what the show is. The show know what it is. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but there were some moments where there was some dialogue, some acting at points, some storylines where I'm just like, what is going on? It was very messy at times, very confusing at points as far as where they were going, and there were stakes at one point, then consequences like, oh, they're going there, but then they kind of undo itself. So I'll just kind of leave it at that without spoiling too much, but I will say out of the 3 parts thus far, kind of wrapping up my non-spoiler portion here, is this is probably my least favorite, the first 3 parts thus far. Again, I thought the first 2 parts were just filled with great horrific moments, great character developments, really good moments. Another thing I didn't like, and I haven't liked it since day one, I'm not the biggest fan of all the love stories. I think that they don't invest as much time and effort in developing those love interests from Nick and Sabrina and Harvey and Roz and Theo and his love interest in this season and Zelda and all this stuff. I think the love stories are just kind of flat for me personally. Whenever Sabrina deals with the mortal aspects, her friends in high school at Baxter High, I always feel like that kind of brings the levity of the show down a little bit, in my opinion, because I like the more supernatural elements of the show. But nevertheless, I definitely say this is my least favorite season thus far. But with that still being said, there are moments that I enjoyed about part 3 that I had a good time with. I'm looking forward to part 4 to see what they explore, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as far as, time and stuff like that, and Father Blackwood. But there's a fun element to the show, and it brings me back for more. Again, the show has a spell on me that I keep coming back, and I'm excited to see more. But I will say to you all, I think this is the weakest part thus far. So now get into the nitty gritty, into the spoiler aspects of what I actually liked and didn't like. Again, going in more, let me start off with the negatives first and going more in depth. We get the pagans, right? The forest people, the people of the old gods, which I like some of that element, and by far the best episode to me was either episode, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was episode 2 with the Ice Cream Man and all that. I thought that's when the show was just like hidden on all angles. It reminded me so much of season or part 2 when they go dark and they go gritty and they have these side missions that are just so compelling. And then we didn't get any more of that from the rest of the season. But going back to the villains, the Carnival people, kind of reminded me of Midsummer. They were praying to kind of Midsummer / Hereditary, with the how Hereditary had that element of what they were building, who they were worshiping, and then Midsummer with the Green Man and all that stuff. So definitely some Ari Aster moments, and also now that we're in the spoilers, kind of reminded me of Endgame Avengers with the whole time paradox and everything. We got 2 Sabrinas, which we'll talk about at the end. But going back to my dislike, I just thought the pagans, they had a threat to them, but by the end of the season, it was just like, oh, that was kind of easy. And the thing that really kind of frustrates me about the show, and also this part in particular, is just like the power levels. It's just like, okay, you have your father's a devil, you're the queen of hell. I know she lost her powers, but it's just like at one point, are there powers at seance levels to like they can't do anything? I'm just so confused by the rules that are established in the universe, and then when they're taken away and then they're brought back just for convenience for the plot, it just kind of confused me at times. And like I said, when the pagans, they were winning the whole show pretty much, and they just kind of the whole time paradox. And yes, it was funny that Sabrina acknowledged that this was kind of a back to the future type of thing with the time paradox and seeing 2 of her and all that stuff. But it was funny when she said, said, it's time travel. It doesn't have to make sense. It does. Like, it didn't make sense to me, the whole time paradox. And what the hell was that thing in the bubble that Blackwood got at the end? Like, they didn't explain that. Obviously, that's going to be the big threat, the big ending threat. And I don't know if that's the last part of Sabrina, if we're going to get more after part 4, but that's like the big thing, is that time bubble thing. And then Judith and her brother, it was just a lot of the storylines. Again, there was a lot going on in this season, and I appreciate a lot that they were trying to do. And it got weird. I mean, it got batshit crazy at times, so much, and I'm just like, this is almost too crazy for me. And there was like a musical at one point. They had like 5 sing-alongs in this season, which I liked some of it. I didn't like a lot of it though. The whole cheerleader angle, I thought kind of fell flat. Again, I'm saying a lot of negative stuff because this is the spoiler portion. If you guys disagree with me, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're on the same page as me, I'm just going to keep rambling on this kind of rant, I guess you want to call it this, because I really enjoy this show, and there was a lot about this season that I liked, but there was so much that just fell flat to me. Again, there were so many unanswered questions, and they brought in that gentleman, the Prince from Hell. He was just kind of there, and then he wasn't. And then Nick, I thought Nick was kind of put on the back burner. And I actually appreciate this show not relying on Sabrina being in love with a guy all the time. Harvey, Caliban, whatever his name was, and then obviously Nick. I like that she's kind of out on her own and being herself and learning who she is as a person. But at the same time, it's just like, those other characters were at that expense. I've never been a fan of Harvey. I'm not going to lie. I think he's probably one of the more weaker aspects of the show. Not the actor, just the character. I feel like they don't know what to do with him, and the stuff they gave him this season was just so uneven. His father liking a snake lady, him and Roz, him loving Roz and not loving Roz, her to be, unstoned. I just feel like all the morals, to be honest with you all, with Roz, with everything, she was stoned half the season. That's kind of funny, stoned. But she was, in the position she was in half the season. Theo and Robin, that storyline was nice to see. I like that Theo now has someone he's in love with, and the hobgoblin, wherever he is, Robin. So I like that aspect, but I feel like the human mortal element of the show is just so underdeveloped, in my opinion. It's just kind of underwhelming. And it just, whenever they go to the mortal aspect of the show, I'm just like, I can't wait to go back to Sabrina and Hell and Sabrina and Nicholas and all the supernatural, the aunties and Ambrose and Prudence, that we spent so much time with this story that I just wasn't invested in, which is literally, I'm not a fan of a lot of the mortal stuff, I'm being honest with you all. But going back to my positives, like I said, the rant's ending there, but as far as my positives, getting back into the spoiler aspect, it was nice to see, again, Sabrina being out on her own, and I thought that the whole Nick and Hell thing was going to drag for most of the season, but they nipped that in the bud after season 2. And again, the Nick storyline was just kind of underdeveloped. He was a drug addict, and then he had the devil inside of him. Which, speaking of the devil, I'm kind of all over the place in the spoiler review, but again, just go with me, comment below, let me know your thoughts. But the devil, it's just like, how powerful is he, or lack of power the devil has? Her dad is just like, now he has a baby that he's going to be waiting to be born with Lilith, with being a son, which I thought that was just kind of weird how that kind of played out. Anyway, going back to the positives, right? So the devil, he had some stuff to do. I don't feel like they don't know what they're doing with him quite yet. It'll be interesting to see how these two Sabrinas are going to play along. Will he notice that there's another Sabrina on Earth, and he has a Sabrina in Hell with him? Who's going to call that out, and how's that going to play out? But again, I enjoy some elements of this show. Again, the aunties are the best to me, even though their storyline was just kind of weird, and the Zelda and the woman from New Orleans, I don't know where that came from. I nothing against it. I love that the show has transgender conversation with Theo, and they have conversations about bullying. They have, showing that love is love, no matter if you're a man, a woman, whatever the case may be. But I just didn't feel like that just came out of left field. Like, at first, I thought that the voodoo, the girl from New Orleans, put a spell on them and was like a bad person, but it was a love angle there. I did not see that coming. We'll see where that goes. And obviously Hilda and Dr. Z, he was dead and he wasn't. That's probably let me go back to my negatives. I know this video is kind of all over the place. Again, I'm a big fan of the show. This is why I'm kind of venting with you all. This is why I do these videos. So, the show had consequences. There were stakes. Everyone died. I knew that they were going to undo all that, but it was just like, leave someone dead. I know that Prudence lost her sister. Sure, you can leave that alone. And she kind of, the way that it ended with her and Nick at the steps was just kind of weird. But I thought that I love the aunties with everything. They're my favorite characters, but they should have kept one of them dead, because that would have gave the circumstances so much. It would have paid off. All those people that we lost. Again, I knew they were going to bring them back, but it would have really hit home if one of the aunties stayed dead, or if Dr. Z stayed, or C stayed dead. It was just like everyone was brought back, and it was just like you just undid everything. All the emotional moments that you might have had. I didn't get too emotional when they died, because I figured they were going to bring them back anyway. But I was just like, oh, okay, the show is going there. But then they just redid it and everything, which just kind of a eye roller for me, in my opinion. But anyway, I know it sounds like I didn't like this season, which, as I mentioned in my non-spoiler, this is my least favorite part thus far. But there are elements of this show that I really enjoy with part 3. Again, it reminds me at best when it's at its peak, and when they do episodes like the Ice Cream Man and all that stuff, I really enjoy it. It reminds me of Buffy, because I'm a big fan of Buffy, and it has those elements to me with vampires and werewolves and demons and witches and all that stuff. I love the supernatural elements about the show, but then the show just gets a little bit out of hand when it has to go to the love story, and they got to do musicals, and they got to have this person has an arc and this person has a story, and it just loses its focus sometimes. So again, if I were to rank the seasons for me personally, it's definitely 2, 1, and 3. I'm still looking forward to part 4 to see what Blackwood has up his sleeve, and what did he let out of the town in Greendale, and see what goes on there. But again, this is probably my weakest one out of the 3 parts thus far. 8 episodes, which are shorter than the previous parts. Part 1, I think, was 10 episodes, plus we had that winter special and a Halloween special, I think, too. And then part 2 was 9 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. This was only 8. But again, I think this was the weakest one, in my personal opinion, minus 1 or 2 episodes. Again, that ice cream episode was fire to me, in my opinion. But anyway, that's just my thoughts, guys. I still enjoyed it, but it's my least favorite part thus far. But I want to know what you all thought of part 3 of Sabrina on Netflix. Did you like it? If you did, tell me all the things you liked about this show, and let me know, what was the things that really made you happy about it. If you didn't like it, which I'm not saying it was a terrible season, I just didn't like it as much as the first 2 parts. But if you didn't like it, let me know some of the things you didn't like, and what are your rankings? Was this your favorite part? Which, let me know your rankings of the 3 parts thus far. So give this video a thumbs up, really helps out the channel. Again, comment below, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all my videos. Coming pretty soon, I got my HBO review for The Outsider episode 4. I got a review up for The Gentleman on my channel now, and of course, got many more things coming pretty soon. If you haven't already, follow me on all my social media accounts on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all those fun social media outlets. Again, thank you all for watching this review. We'll be back with another review pretty soon. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.